turned out to be completely unreliable assholes.
Good evening, listeners, and good evening, Tim.
Good evening, Ryan.
We're here today for a still untitled podcast.
That's
this is
right.
a trial run, even like a pre-pilot almost.
Yeah.
But
what did you call it? Like negative episodes or something like that?
Yeah, we'll call this negative episode negative 2.
Yeah, we probably need
saying
one more.
We should at least do 2 before saying anything's official. But we want to get feedback on this. Anyways, Tim and I are both horror fans, aficionados, and filmmakers.
I'm not sure that I would go so far as to call myself an aficionado.
Well, what makes an aficionado an aficionado?
Depth of knowledge.
Well, I mean,
I watched a lot of it.
I brought over those books that I've read and forgotten all about, so...
That counts. Yeah, but that's just it. You've read books about it.
Right.
I have not.
You're going to read them and forget about them, so then you too can be an
That's
aficionado.
right. Yeah, if that's the bar for being an aficionado.
Right. Well, so I saw on
I can do that.
Facebook... Well, actually, I had a good friend of mine who's sort of a horror movie buddy say, have you ever thought about doing a horror podcast? And I said, no. But then I started thinking about it. And then sort of not too long after that, I saw Tim here on Facebook saying he was thinking about doing a horror podcast.
This is true.
What made you post that?
I think mostly I've been wanting to do a podcast of some sort that revolved around movies in general. So initially I thought I would just do like a generalized movie, review podcast. But that seemed kind of boring in general, and there's a lot of them out there. And so I figured I'd focus a little bit in on something specific, and since the stuff that I personally want to be making falls into the horror genre, it made sense that I would focus on that, and it would help me learn more about that so that I could be better at making it.
Yeah.
When that eventually comes about.
It's fun to talk about, too.
Yeah.
And what we settled on, sort of, or at least what we first talked about, as far as who this is maybe for, we're trying to think in terms of other horror fans, obviously, or not horror fans, but some people who maybe don't have an immediate friend circle or immediate horror friend to sort of talk to. There's an excitement after you watch a horror movie where you kind of want to sit down, talk to someone about it who's equally excited about them. So,
yeah, and like one of my favorite podcasts is pretty much centered around comic book movies in particular, which is, not necessarily a narrow market anymore, but the same rule kind of applies, right? Like not everybody watches those movies. So if you're really into, Marvel movies or whatever, and none of your friends are, who do you talk to about it?
Right.
So I think that applies here as well.
So we're going to talk to each other about it.
And by proxy, the listener?
Right, exactly. You're in the room with us right now, in fact, if you're listening to us technically. So
creepy. If you only knew what kind of room we were in right now.
It's perfect. I'm glad how this worked out.
Yeah, it's great.
And we thought a fun way to start with this, trying on for size, is to say something that scares us.
We also should actually introduce ourselves.
Oh, right. Well, this is a better... Let's do both.
Yes.
All right, so my name is Ryan McDuffie. I am afraid of heights ever since I was a little kid and my dad held me over a cliff to look at sea lions. And he said...
Wait, to look at lions?
Sea lions.
Oh, well,
sea
less
lions. But I mean, I forget if it was before or after that, but I had always been then since afraid of even being on shoulders. I have that very, very, vertigo was like very, very easily activated in me.
Yeah.
And I've been living here in Los Angeles now for 10 years after graduating. Almost 10 years. 10 years this next summer. And I went to UC Santa Cruz, studied film production, worked with some good friends, and out of film school, made a production company, made a bunch of films, did some work with them, making other films for hire. And then all throughout that, I've been making short films. So I'm sort of at a rate of like one short film a year since coming down here. And when I say make, I mean like direct, have some participation in the writing, produce, be the maker of it. And one horror film that's a straight up horror film is amongst those, and other ones with horror elements. And for my more immediate career, sort of like what Tim mentioned earlier with himself, I'm really excited about getting into the horror field. Knock on wood, best I can.
Cool. So my name is Tim Aslan, and what was the next thing you talked about?
I combined what scares me and biography.
That's right. What scares me. Okay. I think probably first and foremost is water, or the idea of drowning. Similarly, when I was like 3 years old, I was in a Smurf floaty that wrapped around your waist, which I don't think they make them like this anymore. And I was teetering back and forth and flipped over completely and was stuck. So my little legs are like flailing in the air.
Yeah.
And I have a very, very like vivid memory of this, even though I was quite young. But almost immediately my mom and a lifeguard jumped in and grabbed me. But it was enough. So now small spaces, water where I can't touch the bottom, the idea of drowning, they scare me quite a lot.
Total loss of control in the face of death is what we each faced at a young
smothered.
age. Yeah.
My brother used to like turn me upside down and hold me down, like hold a blanket over me upside down, so I would totally freak out. Beyond that, I went to Connecticut College. I was a theater major, which kind of just covered the generalized theater stuff. Did some acting, did some writing. I directed I directed two short plays. And then lived in New York for a little bit, and then moved out to LA almost 14 years ago. And have been writing, and more recently started to get my hand into filmmaking and directing. I've directed a couple shorts so far, neither one of which are horror, but so be it.
Fine.
I didn't write either of them, so. And yeah, that's pretty much it. I think that covers me.
Great. And to move into what we're doing here today, too, I forgot to also mention, we sort of talked about who this is for, but I also think it's fun, or at least where I would want to be coming from when listening to this, is having seen the film that we're talking about.
Right. So we would sort of plan, although with the first one you can't really do this, but whatever.
Right.
At the end of every episode, we'll have a movie that is readily available, most likely on Netflix, just because most people have that, that we're going to watch and present as the next week's, or whatever, however often we do this, episode, so that the listener can latch on, watch it themselves, and know what the hell we're talking about.
But then, as we also said, you're welcome to hear it even if you haven't seen it, which is each their own.
Of course.
But the format we're going to follow, starting off here, to see what comes with it, so we aren't totally just rambling.
Good luck.
But yeah, so
I'll be rambling.
As far as a review style, we'll ramble. But as far as control, improvising within verses and courses, we're going to do a summary of the film, short, what worked for us, things that didn't work for us, and then things of note.
Things
that were interesting, stood out, but maybe necessarily couldn't be categorized good or bad.
Right. I've got a couple of those.
Cool. Okay, well, so the film that we watched is a Netflix film, 2017, directed by McG.
McG!
You know what it is? The Babysitter.
All right, tomorrow night, you, me, party.
What up, B, call us if there's any trouble, okay? Cole, don't cause any trouble.
I bet B has boys over at your place all the time. That's what babysitters do.
Seriously, have you ever been awake after she's fallen asleep?
Yeah, it was just funny too because we were we were going to watch something else. I don't remember what, but I had already started watching it and it was pretty much unwatchable, which isn't really an excuse. But we agreed that maybe there was something else that we could jump on board that neither one of us had seen, and it was The Babysitter, which had been interesting me. I kept looking at it and thinking, do I want to watch that? Like, does that interest me at all? And seeing that it was directed by McG kind of actually made me, like, apprehensive.
Right, same here.
I was like, what's this going to be?
So now I have a new appreciation for him, which we'll get into.
Absolutely.
So the summary I wrote down, and then as soon as I'm done with this, please extrapolate on this in my own verbose way here. A sorta nerdy, sorta introverted 12-year-old's parents leave for the weekend, leaving him with his usual babysitter.
Smoking hot.
Thank you. I actually just thought that's important. Who he still has, meaning he still has a babysitter, despite being old enough to not need one. He stays up past his bedtime to see the babysitter and a group of fellow high schoolers. They're all like seniors and high schoolers, the babysitter and her friends. He sees them murder a nerdy kid as part of a satanic ritual of some kind. A violent cat and mouse battle ensues when the babysitter and her fellow popular kid cronies discovers that the kid bore witness to their murder.
Yeah. Do you think that's a spoiler by saying the murder happens?
I mean, it's like the setup of the actual crux of the film, I figured.
True. I was taken by surprise. I knew something was gonna happen. I didn't know it was that.
No, I mean, I didn't either specifically. So then, what's your any other summary points?
I would say what's it about? That's pretty good. I don't know what I would add or subtract to that necessarily. 12-year-old. I want to get into like.
We can jump into what worked
issues.
Let's start. Do you have the opposite of that?
Okay. No. Yeah, 12-year-old kid. Let's put it this way: 12-year-old, in his mind, super awkward.
Okay.
Who clearly is in love with his babysitter, who's much older, 6 years older or whatever. He's 12. She's a senior in high school, and is real excited about the weekend, having her babysit him for the weekend, although socially feels awkward that he still has a babysitter.
Right.
The I don't know what you would even call it, the sort of impetus of why he even is curious about what they do at night is because of his classmate, a cute girl classmate that he's friends with, but seemingly uninterested in because he's infatuated with his babysitter.
Yeah.
Suggests that when he goes to sleep, the babysitter always has an orgy or somebody over to have sex with.
Mm-hmm.
That, to me, is sort of the base setup of this.
Right. But we know it's a horror movie, and none of that aims at a horror movie is the thing. That's why I went that far in my summary.
No, I agree. You're right. We know it's going to go somewhere.
And he witnesses something he shouldn't see. That's not an orgy.
That's not although, he thinks it is at first. Because he doesn't know what orgy means.
Right. He Googles it.
Yeah.
Should we move to what worked for us?
Yeah, for sure.
What worked for you? What worked for you?
It worked like a charm, Smith.
What worked for you?
Well, I was surprised by how much I liked it, which I
was
sort of
too.
already communicated, despite the McG stigma I had going into it. But I have a newfound appreciation for him. His style, it's like Michael Bay-esque in a way, as far as there is a genuine sense of like momentum and fun and revelry, and I don't want to say like comic book world, but certainly like not real world, but a certain heightened sensibility to it. That is just fun. It's, I wrote in your face, fast paced, smart, stupid. Yeah. Smart, stupid, fun.
It's borderline lowbrow, but it's not so much that you're cringing at it. It's kind of enjoyable, the punchiness of it. Right. You know, it's sort of like, it's amusing.
In film school, we had a class that we called, it was a term called high-low films.
Oh.
Like Peck and Paw, stuff like that, you know, high-low films, which I think, you know, this could be included in that. But McG newfound appreciation, Mira, it made me like, I went back to my previous sort of, you know, what was my context from, which was just the Charlie's Angels films. Sure. And I wonder if they were just sort of, I have a friend who loved those films, you know, unironically. And I feel like they were just almost, it felt ironic at the time though, but because like, I'm thinking, okay, one of the sort of only parts I remember in those movies was the second one where...
Full Throttle?
Yeah, Full Throttle, where they go full throttle, where there's some, like, sort of rapid montage showing, like, how they are about to or how they just accomplished some spy thing, and it's the most, like, ridiculous, over-the-top, you know, thing, which was hilarious, but at the time, I feel like me and so many other people were really just rolling our eyes over how ridiculous it was. Right. But I think with this film, it being a horror film, it just sort of works that much better as a playground for that sensibility.
Absolutely. Yeah, I think genre film, heightenedness lends itself to genre.
Yeah, but Charlie's Angels was such a product of the 90s, it wasn't just kind of, couldn't tell.
I definitely thought in the first 15 minutes or so, there were sort of glimmers of Charlie's Angel-ness. Yeah. That I was like the just the jeans that the hot girl is wearing. Right. I was like, are those jeans really like stylish anymore? Because they look like 1996 jeans.
Yeah. I mean, I wasn't
boot cut,
I wasn't complaining,
low-waisted.
But it's more filmmaking style as far as like things that were McG-esque reminded me of that within like the first like minute or two. Remember there's the bully kid and like he says something mean to him and like to put emphasis on the line, the camera like whooshes in and makes a whoosh sound. It just has that sort of hyper kineticism.
It's borderline cartoon-ish, but you know.
Which was helped by, here's another point I made, borderline cartoonish. Filmmaking wise, there was liberal use of camera angles and techniques that, like the point of view shots, like there's the spin the bottle when he comes in and sees the teenagers for the first time. They're starting it off with the spin the bottle game with the camera mounted on like the bottle. Yeah, and it's effective. It's cool. It's fun.
It's kind of just to do something. It doesn't feel like it adds any. Like, there's no story reason to do that.
Well, I mean...
Or is it creating a sense of, like...
I think what it's... I saw it as sort of... I liked it because I thought it moved beyond that where it's even, like... It's using those techniques in such a way where it's not like they are even novel anymore at all. I wrote, like, it cements these techniques in our lexicon, moving past... using them as if they're fresh and cool and just using them as any other tool.
Sure. Yeah,
I
see that.
There's like the body mount cam when he's running around.
Yeah, exactly.
Which is like, so, 10 years ago was when it was novel. So all these things that are like, oh, cool, it's the horror movie that's using this 10 years ago. It's now it's just, as I said, liberally using them just as any other camera technique with someone like McG's filmmaking sensibilities worked for me.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I think in the first 15 minutes or so, as the parents are leaving, the entire scene is a dead POV of Cole, the main character, the kid.
And you remember his name.
And I remember thinking, and I think I said this when we were watching it, like, why are we in this POV shot? Like, what purpose is it serving?
And when you said that, I'm like, I'm smiling, so I don't care, you know?
That's fair. I mean, that's good, actually, that's the reaction. Like, I wasn't mad about it. I just was sort of tilting my head going,
yeah.
Is there a purpose for this?
Well, I wonder now, when you say that, the POV thing and some of the stuff, it's like, if... like the Babysitter, right? That's the title. There's some sort of like schoolboy like fantasy thing going on as far as like the babysitter fantasy, right?
Yeah, you're right. And I mean, and in fact, at a certain point, I asked you, who is this movie for? And you sort of said, you know, it's like for the adolescent kid in all of us.
Mm-hmm.
And so in that respect, that POV shot is kind of, I think, attempting to solidify that we're Cole.
Yes.
We, the viewer, are Cole, and we're in his head. And so maybe, yes, I mean, I think that's a justification that I can get behind.
Yeah. In a slightly pornographic sense, I wonder, as far as
yeah, exactly.
POV babysitter fantasy
That's funny.
goes. But yeah, no, to be back, exactly, put us back in that position. I mean, yeah, why else would you use a POV? It's that exactly.
Yeah.
And it did it.
Yeah, no, I agree.
How about any other things you stood out to you liked?
So one of the big things in the first act is the set. There's about, I'd say, 10 things that are overtly set up, right? Like they're not subtle in any way. Like, hey, there's a knife. Remember this knife. Hey, he likes cars. Remember, like, so RC cars.
Yeah.
He's into RC cars, but he really doesn't want to learn how to drive a real car, which I understand because he's 12. It's a little early.
And he doesn't clean up the cars, yeah.
Right, he doesn't clean up his toys. What's another big one?
My favorite...
Oh, that he doesn't like needles. That's
Yeah,
the
right.
opening scene is him having to get some sort of shot for, what was it?
It's a flu shot.
Oh, flu shot, and he's totally freaked out by
Which is
it.
why he faints later, too.
Yeah. So there's a bunch of things that are just in your face. Hey, look, this is a setup. We're really, really letting you know that this is gonna come back around.
Right.
And every single one of them pays off, right? The question to me is, did you need to be that blatant in your face about it, or would it have been as effective, more or less effective, had it been a little more subtle? But maybe this isn't the movie. This is not a subtle movie.
No.
So it was fine. I think it worked.
I agree they were obvious in that they wanted us to see them, but I think they were, I think they were done well, which raises the interesting question where you said why you wanted to do this podcast when we met in person, which is that question of, well, what does that mean? When it's done well between not being done well? And when thinking about that, I thought sort of like that was something I wrote, too, that I like these setups. And that something to do with you acknowledge them, but then you're already over it as soon as they happen. You don't go, oh yeah, so this is going to be this. Now I'm just waiting for this. At any given point, you're so caught up in the movie that you aren't just always anticipating when the thing with the RC cars is going to happen.
Yeah, exactly. Actually, you're right. In that one in particular, I did not see how that would play out until the exact moment that it played out, where I was like, oh yeah, it's that. It's the ramp. Cool.
But I thought there were some good examples too of things that were set up that were really subtle too and not in your face. My favorite being, or the one that I remembered, and maybe it's just because it was my favorite, being when the parents were leaving for the weekend and saying goodbye, she adjusts, I think it was, the mom adjusts this pyramid trophy, or this glass spike
I
trophy.
missed that one, and I was like, where did that trophy
come from? It
come
was so
from?
subtle. I mean, it was because I was
right.
watching her. She just sort of adjusts it on the stand,
like the mantle or
the
whatever.
mantle, right when they're leaving, and that.
Did she say like what it was?
No,
right? It's not
it just
even
brought
nodded
my
at.
attention to it. So
Interesting.
That when it happened,
I missed it.
So then this is a cool.
So not everything was so in your face.
Well, this is a cool example to break down. How was your reaction to how that ended up being used compared to maybe how mine was?
I did a lot of shouting in this movie. Anytime there was a death, I was like, "Oh shit!"
So the pointy award through the neck after falling off the stairs from
the fact that it was that thing meant nothing to me.
for me, I had more joy from being like,
you're like, oh, yeah.
I recognize it. And that's all it is. It's just sort of filmmaking is a matter of, it's all about making the audience do the work. So it's just as far as like that gap closing of, I remember this, it's the setup payoff, as simple as that gap closing.
That's interesting because, in my mind, I was sort of like, I kind of assumed because of how blatant a lot of the setups were that everything was a blatant setup. And as you're saying, obviously it wasn't. They sort of picked and choosed. Is that how you say that?
Yeah.
Picked and choosed?
Pocked and chaws.
God, that sounds more like it.
Yeah. How about other things? I liked the main kid's performance, and I thought it really held it together, and that everyone else, so good casting overall. Yeah. As far as everyone else but the main kid was like more, I thought, like a caricature type thing.
Oh, totally.
Like they were like the high schools, the older high school students, even the parents.
Yeah. And like every movie that has high school kids, it's so obvious that these kids are like in their late 20s in real life, at least. But whatever.
Which was fine for this one.
Yeah, it was fine.
But yeah, it was interesting though, where everyone but the main character I thought were these heightened characters, and the main character actually had a good grounded, more, if they're, performance.
Although I think when we had sort of talked about this briefly, I had no real good sense for most of the movie as to how old Cole was.
Right, that was the immediate thing.
Because it's like, I don't know if that's just me not knowing how old kids are.
I think it was
based on what they look like.
Right.
I don't know.
I feel like that was both of us not knowing how old kids are.
But I assumed he was around 14, 13-ish.
Right. We had guessed a couple years older than he actually ended up being. At the end of the film, or I think we looked it up, where they mention it. They mention it that he's 12. But we
were like, he's 12.
We thought maybe he was like 13, 14, freshman in high school. But he was good. And
he was good.
Together,
my only sort of thing about him is like, and this is fine, because again, it's more about what the character thinks of himself rather than what we think of him. But I think you would want those to match as best you could. I remember thinking, this kid, this 12-year-old, is way too handsome of a young kid to have the problems that he has, the neuroses that he has.
Is this something that would be better reserved for what didn't work for you,
Maybe.
Tim?
I don't think it's not, no, because it's not that it didn't work. I just remember thinking to myself, like, well, I guess maybe it didn't work.
Maybe this would be a thing that was just
I got over it real fast.
A thing
just
of note?
Thing of note, sure, yeah.
Sorry to be a taskmaster here.
Yeah, that's okay.
But there was lots more that I liked in this film that I wanted to talk about.
Yes, for sure.
I liked the little stupid quick gags and jokes in it. Which I described as, it was like I'm referring to Michael Bay a lot, maybe similar to filmmaking. But the jokes that are like in a Michael Bay movie, but actually
funny.
Yeah. And not just offensive and horrible. But there was the classic gag of stopping the vase from falling and making a sound, so they don't get caught.
That was great.
But it happened a second time, where it's just that was so funny. And then this is so stupid at the end too. There's a bully, a main bully in the story,
right?
And when the parents get home at the end, they run over the bully's bicycle and don't care about it. It was so fast.
Yeah, but I think that's an important kind of lesson in third act, wrapping up every storyline. Mm-hmm. It's I think. In horror in particular, I find that third acts falter a lot. And, loose ends aren't tied up. I'm not saying every movie needs to be tied up with a neat bow. But, I think you have a responsibility to a certain degree that if you've set up a storyline, you want to get some sort of closure on it. Something. Even if the closure is an open-ended closure, at least you address it, right, in the third act. You don't just sort of let it go and it's gone and you're...
Well, if it's a film, in this case, like this film, that I thought has a really good, simple structure. Whether it's the character arc, just the plotting, everything. So that alludes to what you were just saying.
Yeah.
Why I think it works in this kind of film.
Yeah, for sure. What else did I like a lot? The deaths are great.
Yes. I wrote that too. Over the top gore.
Yeah.
Blood gushes.
And not I don't know, it like hit a really nice sweet spot. I think part of this is because the first act is really good at saying, listen, this is what movie you're watching. We're not fooling you. We're not like we're not gonna pull the rug out. This is the movie.
Yeah.
So get on board.
And these are the bad guys that you're gonna have fun watching get killed.
Right. Absolutely. Like I said, almost every death got me essentially yelling.
Yeah, they happened at just the right moments where they were surprising enough.
They felt good. That's really dark to say, but those deaths
we'll get used to it.
So good.
We'll get used to it the more we do this, because we're gonna watch some more slasher movies and stuff, I'm sure. But like, yeah, the gun blast to the head, or that it was just a great head explosion, and the gore bits that gone in his face.
Yeah, let's actually. So I guess
that was the last one. Now can we?
Should we spoiler? Like, is there any need for us to talk spoilers?
No, I think that was our setup. Is that we are just talking about this movie.
I don't.
Really,
yeah, I don't.
As I said, everything's
it's really
a spoiler
hard
to me.
Yeah, exactly. It's hard not to spoil. So, like, trying to not spoil is basically impossible. So let's go through the deaths.
Yes, that was the very first one.
The first one is the one you mentioned in the summary.
It's
right?
a truth or dare, spin the bottle, kill.
Right, and B, which is our super hot blonde babysitter.
I'm so glad you remember the names. I always forget them.
So B spins the bottle, or it lands on her. She chooses dare, and the quarterback, the hunky quarterback, who's played by Robbie Amell, who's Stephen Amell, Arrow, the Arrowverse. Do you know anything about comic books, Ryan? Don't get me started. Anyway, he's great. He's Robbie Amell's cousin. Robbie Amell is Stephen Amell's cousin. Stephen Amell is the Arrow on CW.
So he says, kiss everyone here.
Yeah, he says his dare to her is you have to kiss everybody here. So she goes through this sort of long process of like kissing everybody in different ways.
The long lesbian kiss.
Yeah, it's gratuitous long lesbian kiss.
And then licks the one guy's face after that.
Right. Does a very like nice little kiss on the forehead with there's an Asian girl there. Oh, let's actually talk about who the characters are. You've got the quarterback, you have the token black guy who's like so token black guy. You have the cheerleader, and you have the weird kind of gothy Asian girl,
which were set up during the point of view spin the bottle spin with intertitles.
Oh, that's right.
Cool. Side note, though, that's another point we'll talk about.
Yeah, the intertitles.
So yeah, those are the characters.
And then you have this, whatever that would be, fifth or sixth person, other than the babysitter, who is the like quintessential awkward nerdy kid in a plaid shirt.
Right, who we saw earlier that day.
Ryan.
Thanks.
Like right now, I mean, you're wearing a semi-plaid shirt.
Oh yeah.
we were introduced to him in an earlier scene where Cole is ogling B.
Right. It was cool. We didn't really know the intentions. I was like, is this her boyfriend? But we just sort of found out, she was enlisting him for that night.
Right. And I think the initial assumption is that she at the very least is into nerdy guys, and Cole thinks of himself as an awkward kid. So
he's only
sort of like
for the first 5 minutes.
That's right. Yeah, which were really cool glasses too. It was like you can't get he's too cool for me.
Right.
That Cole is way too cool of a kid to be such a I'm scared of things.
That's how it works.
Yeah, that's true. I was like that too. Yeah. I just had a conversation. This is a tangent. I had a conversation with a friend of mine from high school, and I don't know how this got brought up, but I said something about how I felt like not that cool in high school, and she was like, "You're crazy. You were one of the cool kids." And I was like, "I'm definitely not one of the cool kids. Like, I know who the cool kids were. They were in their little clique over there. I wasn't friends with them. I knew them.
Those were the people in the popular clique. They weren't the cool kids."
Oh, maybe that's what she was getting at. She's married, so that ship sailed. She reminds me too every once in a while. She's like, should have asked me out.
That sounds nice of her. Great.
I didn't. Rub it in my face. Sorry.
So this movie brought us right back to high school. How about these deaths?
Right. So these deaths. So we had death number 1, the nerdy guy.
Yes.
B is kissing him as the last person in the circle to kiss. Super lovingly great, like affectionate, beautiful kiss. And then suddenly she impales his head with 2 very large knives.
From somewhere. It's great. They're out of nowhere.
Oh, yeah. You have no idea.
And immediately the blood starts gushing, and
Yeah.
two of the other teens, it's the Asian girl and the black guy, come from the side with chalices.
Yeah, these sort of goblet-y chalice things.
Well, okay, if we're assuming
gold
people...
leafed.
I don't know. We're assuming people watch this movie. Maybe they know all the kills. So what...
Oh, that's a good point.
What worked for you
well,
about
somebody's gonna not have watched it.
Right. But I'm thinking for the people that just did.
Gotcha. That kill was great in its A, execution, and B, surprise.
Right.
Did not see that coming, and it got nice. And I think that one of the things that really worked about this is when there's a gag, they do the right thing of getting... It's not just the gag and then you're out. They hit the gag, they hit a couple more beats, and then they hit it a couple more times to make the gag go seemingly too long, right? But by going just a little bit longer, it comes back around to being really funny.
Right, because we've seen, if it didn't go that far, we'd seen it before.
Yeah. So it was super effective.
Which is horror's kind of a clear, very demonstrative of that idea, which is what I'm really interested in. If we have, like, you know, a ghost story, how do you take it that step further than what we think of as modern right now? Yeah. That's what it always is.
Did you feel a little sense of Evil Dead in this?
Yeah, I mean, I guess it's in everywhere. It's in so many things, those movies. I mean, what particularly?
In the sense that there are gags. It's saying, I think it's they're playing to the gag.
It's not as far as an eyeball going into someone's mouth, but like...
True.
But just next to that. Just in that direction, though.
Yeah, with the intention of getting a laugh.
Right.
For sure.
Yeah.
It really did a good job of hitting that sort of middle ground between, like, it's funny and shocking and graphic.
It's satisfying, you'd say, right?
Oh,
so what's satisfying to you when the girl got blown up with the firecracker and the bug spray underneath the house? Because that was kind of an off-screen kill, but satisfying, which...
What was satisfying to me was how bad the CGI explosion was. I was like, oh man, like that's... I pulled
Usually
that
I
right
notice
up on
those things.
After Effects.
I didn't even notice because I was just so...
Yeah, I think that's probably the weakest kill.
Okay.
But
it had the chase leading up to it, which
the chase was good. The setup of we're under the house and there are spiders was good. I actually thought they were going to do more with the spiders, but it was fine.
Yeah, they were just to sort of be creepy spiders.
Yeah.
I actually wouldn't say... I thought all the kills were kind of on par. I don't know if I had a favorite, but that one worked for me in how it was different as far as, like, it had the more Home Alone fun to it. Of, like, it had that setup of, like, all right, the bug spray, and then we know that he's got to screw it. And so it was, even though it wasn't...
Screw the bug spray?
No, screw the
screen,
Yeah, the screen back on. Yeah, I don't know. That sort of made up for it not being an on-screen kill.
Now, I have a question. Was that explosion the source of the mist that arrived for the next 20 minutes of the scene?
As I said, the mist was the fog that was there when they were watching the old-timey movie before it even happened. Remember?
It was in that?
Yeah, it was misty everywhere.
Oh, man, I didn't catch
He has, like, the perfect date with his babysitter is what they do every weekend.
That's
where
right.
It's like they're acting out scenes of this old-timey movie in this fog-laden backyard. So that's why.
Again, that setup plays out, right? Like, we come back around to that. I mean, it's amazing to me how basically every single scene in the first act has a point. And this is good screenwriting, right? Like, this is what you want. Get Out does this incredibly well. The movie Get Out. But you want every scene to have a purpose that gets paid off.
Right.
And it really does. Like, I think if you went back and sort of took note of what every scene has in it in the first act, each of those things gets paid off.
Right.
And that's amazing, because I don't think that happens that much.
Well, I think there's movies where that most benefit from that, which
True.
is probably maybe the majority of movies, but
Yeah.
I'll throw out the more like
I think it's something as a screenwriter you would strive to at least get close to. Mm-hmm. It's not always going to happen, but like it's good to me. What it says is like they put some real effort into
right.
making this, and which I think is a failing of a lot of horror films, that they don't think it through, and then you kind of go, oh, well, there's some holes here. Mm-hmm. Like, what happened, to that guy
right.
who we met? Why'd we even meet him? So like, it's good to not have to ask those questions.
Yeah, exactly. It was tight, which was something that sort of brings me to maybe. I thought it was a perfect length. I loved how short it was. It was like an hour 25 minutes.
Yeah.
It was great.
So and I assume that includes 6 minutes or so of credits. Mm-hmm. So it's really an hour 19-ish, which is
it was great.
Which is 79 minutes really of runtime.
I liked
screen time.
I liked the lore of the book and the spells, and that it wasn't over-explained, where it was just like,
God, it was barely explained. You're right.
It's
but
like,
it didn't need to be.
No, exactly.
You're like, it's a book of the devil. The end.
That's all we need to know. Exactly. I like that.
It makes grants your wishes.
Right. Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah. We sort of find that out. It's like, great.
It's sort of like
it's blood.
like we don't need to be. It doesn't need to be explained in every movie what an EMP is.
Right.
You know what I mean? It's like, we get it. We've seen a lot of movies that demonstrably explain that it's an electromagnetic pulse, whatever. It's like, we get it. We know what an EMP is now. It's like saying, this is a gun. We get it. We know what a gun is.
I think more or less we covered everything. I think I have. I loved the big finish, the stunt of the car driving over her. I thought that was just a satisfying.
It was super satisfying.
Yeah, I use that word a lot in this review.
What I think was really successful about that is, again, I didn't see that coming. Mm-hmm. It's like the setups were just enough for you to take note and go, yeah, I know. I've been told what I need to be told. But then I found myself really kind of on the ride and not waiting for the setup, not waiting for the payoff.
Yeah.
Which is great.
Right.
And amazing to me that that's the case.
Yeah. I mean, I know, because it was like, he was getting the car lessons at the beginning.
Yeah.
And but that didn't mean I think, that means he's going to use the car to kill her at the end.
No, definitely not. No, but it's super satisfying. Like, the catharsis of that is
Playing
great.
the queen.
It's so simple.
It was great. And it was just, I don't know, I thought the perfect kind of amount of action set piece for this film. Where, like, you see a film where it's just like, blowing up a house is no big deal. But this one, I actually felt the weight of, maybe it was just good stunt work too, of driving a car through the front of a house.
Yeah. In fact, I remember at one point thinking to myself, why did they choose a house that has this giant bay window looking out over the front yard, right? Like, and they're like committing murders in the living room with the curtains open of this giant bay window.
Yeah.
And it's sort of like when the car went through it and you got that shot of her looking through the window and the car is coming at her, you're like, that's a good reason. Mm-hmm. Right. I'll take that.
Yeah. So we could have this moment.
Yeah.
All right.
Also that they didn't care, apparently, that they're just committing gruesome murders in front of, the neighborhood.
Right.
Which kind of speaks to a larger theme of, like, suburbia and sort of the like, I don't know, I mean, the sense of, if it's not in our house, it's not our problem.
Which I think is something that we're getting more and more aware of as a society. So I feel like this is sort of within the last bastion of kids, who speak on their walkie-talkies together,
right.
Like kind of neighborhood film, which is why, the appeal of the Stranger Things, because we latch on to the good from it all, even though there's always the veneer that was revealed in the satire. Was clear. All right, how about one more thing that worked for me, and then we'll move into what didn't work.
Yeah.
I was surprised what worked for me was I wrote the meme-esque interjection titles. Like, did it actually say OMG at one point?
That's right. It said what the fuck at one point. It said yeah bitches at what point.
Which things like that, sort of like, I remember it was like how Chef did texting or tweets or something like that, the Jon Favreau movie, where it's just like, I admire these attempts to like, to bring in the sort of, I don't know, what would you say? You know
visual, representation of either subtext or of actual text. Like how do you solve the problem of showing the audience that people are texting? Mm-hmm. And they did it pretty well. It pops up. It was at the right...
For this film, though, yeah. They weren't text. It was... there was text in this one.
Briefly.
Right.
I think it was between the girl, the 12-year-old friend.
Right. Well, I'm talking more specifically about,
but you mean the Chiron sort of, like, extreme Chiron things.
I always said Chiron.
Oh, well. You're probably right.
Know.
I know somebody named Kieran, so maybe that's why I'm saying
Kieran's Chirons.
Yeah, I mean, I thought they were... I think the first time it happened, I was like, that's a little... And then one thing I noted is that the font of them changed with every single one of them.
Right.
And I don't know. I think you establish a thing, and then they kept it up appropriately
and do it.
It didn't go too long. Like, it stopped happening sort of once you got into the later second act, and that's good. Like, we don't need it anymore.
Right.
So yeah, I thought it was fine. It was effective.
All right. How about now? What didn't work for us? And I imagine we're gonna have like audio transitions here.
Oh,
that'd be cool.
Fancy.
It's not ready yet.
Seems to work okay.
No, something important's missing.
What did not work?
Well,
wait, can I start off? Because I set up
sure.
I think this is going to be a rare thing, but you'll see why I wanted to do this. A thing that didn't work for me was the meme-esque interjection titles. So this example where these things did and didn't work for me.
Yeah.
Kind of like what Tim just sort of said when they first came on. I just couldn't help but have this like, what reaction to it.
Yeah.
But then I realized what this is. It's a very subjective, like, I am not a 13-year-old anymore. Like, I really thought this was sort of like a cool, I don't know, this is like, it was the kind of thing that made me feel old, and it's like, this is how the hip kids watch movies nowadays. They're doing it for the hip kids.
But this is a very subjective movie, right?
Yeah.
Like, this is, you're the kid.
Right, so I was able to both get on board with it. I just had these two warring sides of myself, which is why I felt fair saying that this worked and didn't work for me. Okay, sorry, what were you going to say about what didn't work for you?
Okay. The girl, the babysitter. And I honestly might have to sort of take this back a little bit, because I think there's a positive to what I'm about to complain about. But her face kind of bothered me. I know that's a sexist thing to say, but what I mean specifically is that the style of acting and the like almost not gratuitous, but almost overtly gregarious sort of cheesiness that she interacts with the kid, it made me uncomfortable. And I didn't like it in the moment, but the purpose of it is totally right and effective. It made me go, something's quite just slightly off about this. So initially I'm thinking, like, was she the best actress to cast? And then as the movie goes on, you kind of go, yeah, that's probably why she was cast. Because she has this thing she's super attractive, she's very sexy, she's very gregarious, and almost comically, like, playful with the kid, and a little creepy.
Yeah, her face just kind of says, but don't totally trust me.
Yeah, and that's great.
But you want to.
Right. Yeah, because subjectively, like, you're looking through the kid's eyes, you're going, yeah, of course this kid is in love with her.
So this is something that bothered you, but that in the end...
It rolled back around, and I appreciate it.
Okay. Well, you know what didn't... this is interesting. I really didn't have a whole lot that didn't work for me in this film. I was grasping, which it sounds like you might be too right there, unless you have any clear things that definitely didn't work for you.
There's a couple. Okay. Yes, I have one in particular, and I think this, as we move on with this podcast, this is going to be something that I bring up a lot. There are some continuity things in this movie, and in every movie, but in this movie that were really glaring to me. There's only about 3 or 4, but the 3 or 4 were like, oh, God, stop! Like, just why? Like, it's a simple thing. Like, just get the continuity right. One of them was there's a moment when the cheerleader is seemingly dead. And Cole is going up to her and checking to see if she's dead. So he's sort of leaning in close and like seeing if she's breathing and waving his hand in front of her closed eyes, which I thought was kind of funny. And she doesn't wake up. But in filming that, they're cutting from essentially a 2 shot that you see Cole and her in, and then a sort of off-kilter close-up of her face. And in the 2 shot, she's shoulder, her face is dead straight on with her shoulders, right? She's looking straight out. And in the close-up, her head is tilted towards camera, obviously so you can see it, towards her left shoulder. And it's almost a thing that you're like, who gives a shit? But it bothers the living fuck out of me.
Well, I think this is interesting. It says something about you because I'm extremely forgiving of continuity errors.
Oh man!
It's like, for me, it's like it's like, you know, when you.
But do you notice it?
I do sometimes, but I think if I'm in the movie, I don't. Like, you know, like during a dialogue scene, like in some of the best movies, you know, when they're in clearly their head's facing a different position, their hands are in a different position, and it cuts. It's just, there's something more important to the momentum of a scene, you know? I don't know.
Well, yes, but if it's taking...
Or performance, I should say. You're editing for performance, not momentum.
No, I agree, and that's important. But I think if it's taking a viewer out of...
Which clearly did for you.
Yeah, that's bad.
Right.
Like, and it's not a hard fix,
but
right?
Like, I wanted to say, so what to you? Like, the first...
That's fine.
The one that, when you called out, though, where it was like the cobwebs in her hair. The cobweb continuity.
Holy fuck. There's like 6 shots of the mom with cobwebs on her, and it's like... One's on her forehead, and then the same one is like around behind her ear, and then the same one's like right on top of her head, and then the next one's on her shoulder, and then the next one there isn't a cobweb, and then the cobweb's back. That drives me fucking nuts. Completely out of my mind nuts. Because then all I can see is the fucking cobweb.
So does it I'm just curious, like...
Have a continuity person on set and just... Or a makeup person or whatever, and just be like, here's where the cobweb goes. The end.
You know what? Yes, because they had the Netflix budget for this one. So if you're saying it's... But I mean,
Are you telling me that this movie, which obviously costs money...
Yeah.
Like, it's not a $500,000 movie.
Think of all the times...
They had a continuity person.
No, I'm saying there was
one. Or a script supervisor.
And think of all the times... Think of all the continuity that was correct in the film.
That's true. That's fair.
You know, it's like they always get through, and I think you're hypersensitive to it, which is really interesting to me, and I hope we can continue to break down.
It drives me out of my mind.
The only other thing I had on what didn't work for me, and this was still felt like kind of a stretch, was just that there were sometimes frustrating moments of him where it was just like the front doors open and he runs up the stairs, you know? Which is classic in horror movies. But at the same time, I'm like, oh, but there's the linebacker, quarterbacker guy who can easily outrun him.
Yeah, that's true.
So which becomes like a sort of a plot thing later, or a device later. So again, this was a stretch where...
That's an interesting point, because I think a lot of the times when we watch horror films, and I think part of the fun of a lot of horror films is that there are those moments where you're like, just run away, or just like get out of the car, or whatever it is, right? Like, call the police, whatever that thing is, and it undercuts the intelligence of the character, right? In that moment, potentially.
Yeah.
In this case... You have that initial thought, and then it actually is justified, kind of blatantly justified, to be like, just so you know, we know he should have just run.
Right.
Here's why he didn't, because he's a pretty smart kid.
Right.
And that's really good. If that was, I don't know if that was their intention, but it seemed like it had to have been, right?
But
Like, it's demonstrably, like, stated. He's like, you're the quarterback. I obviously can't outrun you.
Which, I mean, I thought, oh yeah, that does make sense.
So it's good.
But like,
Although,
and this is the other thing where it's like a lot of these mistakes, though, it's interesting because there's a line too where it's like, when there are these like, oh, why don't you just do this moments in a horror movie, like we're talking about, where the movie couldn't happen if it wasn't that way.
True.
And in some horror movies, it's still frustrating and it would be a better movie. But in this case, it would be like, it wouldn't be a better movie, I thought, which is the line I mentioned. Like where, instead of running up to the treehouse, he could have just hidden in like one of the bushes and probably never been found the whole night, you know?
Right.
Like, but then it would have been just a movie of him hiding in a bush. Which...
Yes, and also... a 12-year-old may not be thinking that far ahead.
But he's a smart cracker.
He is smart, so it's a little...
Which means
like,
the film was smart, if he was smart.
Do you call him a smart cracker?
Yeah. I think I did. I meant to say cookie.
A smart cracker! That sounds super
We should mention
weirdly
everyone
racist.
was white in this film.
Except for the black guy, who is the first... Wait, is he the first?
He was the second to die. He was the first of the kids' kills. And then the bully was black too.
Right. So the cheerleader
I just meant all the leads. I just meant
Yeah. No, I agree.
The kid and the babysitter. A couple of crackers.
He's a smart cracker.
All right, things of note.
Things of note!
This should be interesting.
Mm-hmm.
I just had two.
Why you gotta kick the mic? You know?
I just had two short ones. Two things.
That's it?
Note. Yeah.
Okay.
I just wanted to give Ken Marino a shout out, who played the dad.
He's good.
He's funny, and I've just been watching the first of the Wet Hot American Summer revivals, which he's just great in. So just shout out Ken Marino's in this film, and I enjoyed him.
Did you recognize the mom?
No, but
I've seen her. I can't remember who she was. I think
I liked her too.
Isn't she Liam Neeson's daughter in what's the Liam Neeson movies there? He's
Takens.
I
haven't seen the Takens.
I'm gonna look it up right now. She's good though.
The other thing, did you have any other things of note?
Oh yeah.
What do you want to note?
Maggie Grace, is that her? Is this the mom? Here's one. Maybe it's not her. It's her twin sister. So, things of note. I don't know if I classify this as, if this should have been in my things that didn't work, because I don't know what the purpose of this was, but there are glaring differences in the color correction between like 2 or 3 scenes. And I think that it was trying to accomplish an effect. What I mean by color correction, for anybody who doesn't know, it's like a post filming process where you color the tone.
You're talking about like the final showdown when it's him and the babysitter, how it got like way more like quote unquote scary blue and dark like inside.
Yes. So there was a moment when they were in the younger girl. So the younger girl, the 12-year-old girl whose name I don't remember, lives across the street, and Cole runs across there and hides in there with her, and then the babysitter comes through with a shotgun and like stalks them, and she gives up and walks away. Which is, well, like she gave up really easily. Maybe she thought there were parents there. I think that's what the the justification of her leaving was. So in that scene, we're sort of in a bluish, grayish tone. It almost looked uncolored to me, meaning they didn't do a post-color process on it, which is surely not the case. But whatever they chose for that color palette was much grayer than the previous shots that we had
I think
seen.
it was just them.
So they did that on purpose.
Yeah, I think, which is interesting. It was just more bold choices.
And fine. That's why I say this is of note
Yeah.
for me more than of like a bad thing. I think that it was probably justified. But it did take me out for a second. And I'm like, why is this shot so, like, look so different? And then Cole goes back over to his house. And it's even more sort of dark, cold, almost like pretty blue. And then there's a moment where he walks from one room. It's sort of a brownish blue. Mm-hmm. He walks from this one room, which I don't remember that room being in his house.
I think it was
previously.
just a different angle of the living room.
Okay, and because it's so dark, it sort of looked different. He turns from there and walks into the kitchen, and there is like a clear phase effect where it goes from that bluish, brown, gray to green. Like, and it's very purposeful.
Right.
I just don't know why.
I think it's cool. It's like how, I kind of almost wanted to use the word comic booky when we were first talking about it. It's just more that highly stylized, not so far as like it's just all red or it's just all blue, but it's just using the color correction liberally for this kind of, I don't know, it's got that pop. That's a better word for it. Pop sensibility of these bright colors.
Do you think it's odd that there is virtually no red in this movie? Red being sort of the quintessential danger, horror, like
that's interesting.
Something bad is going to happen color, which is used a ton.
Even the blood was pretty dark. It was
very dark.
Yeah. I think it was a cool choice if it is intentional, because what it did for me was I don't think that stark red for Suburbs. For me, it just very much put me in this sort of like the suburbs, or in in the neighborhood, like in the house. The house had like painted walls and stuff, but they were like blue or orange,
they were all kind of muted-ish, like but nothing crazy.
No white walls. That
white
thing.
Walls. The death of all film. The white wall. Don't do it. Paint your walls if you're going to make a movie.
Or not red if you're in suburban. I think they were in Illinois.
Were they? I have
was
no
looking
idea.
for license plates. The last sort of thing I had on.
I have one more thing of note. They use the car from the movie Role Models.
Was it literally the same?
I think it was. How many whatever that color is, sort of a almost turquoise Bronco, like 1976 Ford Bronco with no top, like it's a open cab Ford Bronco that's teal. Mm-hmm. There's no way that's not the same car.
Cool. And
it's fine. I just happen to be like, hey, look, that's definitely the car from Role Models.
You were very excited about that.
Oh, yeah,
Which would be, I just don't know cars, so I don't pay attention to that. But, that is interesting if it was this guy is renting out his car, this gal or guy is renting out their car, his car collector, to the Babysitter.
Have you ever tried to
Models.
get a car for a film? Like a specific car? It's a pain in the ass.
Not a specific model, but like we needed a kind, that fit a certain vibe. I've had to do that once,
But did you try and go through like actual like car, or you just went through friends and stuff?
It was sort of like when doing all these low budget shorts I've done, where serendipity plays a large role.
I wish I had more serendipity. I wish I knew somebody named Serendipity.
The last thing, this is almost going to sort of sound like a positive thing, so I'm going to contextualize it, but I thought what was interesting and noteworthy was the higher budget, that there was a Netflix budget behind it on display. And why I say that wasn't necessarily a good or bad thing is because in horror specifically, I think low budget can more often than not be a benefactor, which it was as part of probably Mick G's used his Charlie's Angels budget, and just had his measly 25-30 million or whatever for this one.
What do you think this movie? What if you had to guess? Would you say it was a $25 million?
No,
movie?
Maybe that's high. I'd say anywhere from like 10 to 30. Because think of what was in it. But here, think of the like an easy one, the music rights to Queen, but when we were talking about earlier, the sort of all like the all the different kinds of camera techniques used, that they were extremely technically well done.
Absolutely.
That takes a budget. And that for me was what was just a sort of interesting. Maybe it is, and that's why I said it would sound like a positive, but just a cool example of like a budget, something with a horror movie with a budget, using it well. For a filmmaker like McG, trying to do those things on the no budget just wouldn't work.
Oh no, I totally agree. I mean, it begs the question too of like, with how Netflix is scooping up titles and saying this is a Netflix original, we don't know who made this movie initially. Like, we don't know, in other words, if Netflix funded this movie as the sole sort of producer, or if this movie was produced and made first, and then Netflix was like, yeah, we'll buy that up and put Netflix original on it.
Should we do our research next time or not? No.
Yeah, maybe.
Let me do our research after we watch it.
We should hire somebody to do research.
Yeah, do you want to be our intern?
Oh, I have to hire myself?
No, I'm talking to whomever we're talking to.
Oh, that'd be awesome. Can you imagine? You, the listener, if anybody wants you can find me at...
I think that we can spend 5 minutes Googling and reading a Variety article and some IMDb trivia. Yeah, that's it for me. I don't know if we're recommending films here, but I recommend The Babysitter.
I definitely would say go watch it. I was very pleasantly surprised.
Yeah. Well, I know, again, I think we're also talking to people who just watched it, in which case we hope you liked it as much as Tim and I enjoyed it.
Yeah, I really liked it.
So for
that, the trophy through the neck death was awesome. Like, for me. I like that second that happened, I was like, I'm super into this.
That was, I think, the moment where we were both, you know what, you're right.
And that's having said, like, they had they killed the cops yet?
No.
Okay, so that was...
I don't remember.
I don't either, but regardless, I was like, I am in. Yeah. I am full on 100% into this movie now.
Right. Because, yeah, we got what we came for.
Yeah. I didn't go into it thinking that it would be that. I really didn't.
It was working in what it was clearly going for.
Yeah.
Cool. The Babysitter, directed by Mick G. Yeah. Next time... we're going to watch, unless there's anything else you want to say.
What did we agree on? I forget.
It's called The Transfiguration.
Oh, yeah.
Which is a cool-looking indie movie. Something about a vampire kid. Yeah. Looks moody.
Another kid.
Mm-hmm. But sort of maybe in the vein of, I don't know. We'll see.
Yeah, I have no idea what this is all about. I've looked at Netflix and been like, that's a movie that exists. I have no clue what.
All right. We'll have, until then, Tim, it's been fun. So
I think we should say you can find me at Tim Aslin. That's ASLIN on Twitter, at Tim Aslin.
Oh, yes. And you can find me and my handles at RyanMcDuffie.com. Is it Mac or Mick? I'm going to spell it.
Go
Ryan.
For it.
McDuffie. And my Instagram and Twitter and email are all linked there.
Ooh.
Which is really spooky. So have a spooky time, everyone. Have a scary day.
Yeah. One of these days I'll have a catchphrase, a sign-off catchphrase.
We're just going to keep trying them. Have a scary day, Tim.
Have a scary night, Ryan.
All right. Bye, everyone. Thank you.
Thank you.
Ah!